Hey, Sam, can you hear me? Okay. All right. Off we go. Welcome, everyone. Sorry for that. Hopefully, you can hear me and see me okay. And let me get my chart up here for you to see. I've got something kind of interesting. As far as the weekly market update is concerned, I'd like to point out that we have an interesting week coming up because there isn't a lot of heavy data that's going to move the markets, with the exception of one thing. That's the PCE report, which is a producers inflation kind of index. And so I want to show you a particular kind of indication that you can be watching this week that I think will be meaningful. And to set this up, I need to do just a little bit of tutorial with you. Some of what I'm about to say, you might find, I already know this, but I think most of you will find it interesting. You probably have not heard this kind of a deep dive on it before. Hopefully you can see my screen. I'm showing a chart of the Euro USD currency pair, and this is a daily chart. Down below, the indicator is the stochastic oscillator, okay? And I want to tell you a little bit about how to read this indicator in a way that, maybe is deeper than what you've heard of before. I have added to this chart the blue lines above and below the price that are the Donchian channels. And it just keeps track of the highest high and the highest low in a given time period. And what I've done is I've synced up the time periods for both of these indicators. That is to say, the Donchian channel by default looks for a 20-day high and low period. And the setting I have here is 14-day. I just changed that to say, show me the highest high and the highest low in the last 14 days. And then by default, the stochastic works off of a 14-day. Now you could change that and make the stochastic go 20, and you can make the Donchian channels stay 20, whatever, right? So long as they're both looking over the same running time frame window, then you'll get this effect. The guy who invented the stochastic oscillator, a man by the name of George Lane, back in the 1950s, he said he had this one belief: momentum precedes price. Now, up until that time, from even further back, people had come up with the idea that volume precedes price. And that kind of makes sense, but especially in today's algorithmically driven environment, volume tends to matter so much less. Um, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter at all, but it's you get a lot of confusing signals in all sorts of different time frames. But I like the idea of momentum preceding price. I would say that it doesn't always precede price either, but that sometimes it does, and especially if it's a persistent and recurrent theme. I'll show you what I mean. So basically, if you look at how much, see, like right here, these 5 out of 6 days, the price is touching the top line, the blue line, and those are the same days that the stochastic is up above. It's 80% um, indication value, and that's what they call these regions overbought and oversold. And I think those are terrible names for the stochastic, because that seems to indicate that a name like that would say, well, it's too high, it's too bought, it's too sold, and no, 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 nothing like that. Don't use it that way. You'll instead look at it more like uh, you know a tendency to be more bullish, tendency to for prices to more likely continue going up. So although this is what the indicator calls overbought, it's really more like time to be bought, right? And down here, time to be sold. If you assume that momentum means the price is going to push further in that direction, you'll find that if once it gets outside of those bands, the first time anyway, first time like here's all this run right here, first time, it's more likely price is going to keep going that way. Or the first time it comes down here, price is more likely that it's going to keep going that way, at least for a while. And then the turnaround is really what you're looking for. It's like, at what point is momentum shifting? So here's a great example. The Euro USD is coming down, 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 down. Look what happens right here at the bottom. See this little bit right here. See, at this point, you've got the bottom, pushing down a new low. That's why the blue line comes down, and here we are clear down here. And on that day that it does that it pushes lower, look what happens to the stochastic. It comes up a little bit. See that? Which means that even though it's pushing lower, momentum is starting to change. And then we come down, we come lower still, and this thing is coming up. And see, we have a higher low here, even as the price makes a lower low, which means momentum is slowing. The downside momentum is slowing. And so then finally, when it makes this day right there, it's actually inside the oversold. It's in the blue region, the 2080 region. But then right here, it makes a downward move, which is about the same price level as this first push down. But look at how high at this point the stochastic is, right? This is even before this day comes, right? But this really gives you the idea, hey, I was here before, and the last time I was here, I was clear down here. Now I'm clear up here on the oscillator, even though the price is roughly the same. So that tells me that the momentum has shifted. It's a fantastic indicator that, hey, maybe it's time for me to think about going bullish. And if you've gotten very fortunate and had that insight right here on that day, well, then this would be a lucky day for you. Really, I mean, it doesn't tell us that we know this day is coming, but it does tell us that this downward trend right here is probably, vulnerable to being broken. That is what this indication on this day told you. And so as this day opens and starts going up, you watch that line, and as soon as it crosses that line, boy, that's a pretty strong indication to go, be a buyer. And it doesn't tell you for sure that this sort of thing is going to happen, but you look at this, what happens afterwards. That's a nice 4 or 5 day run. This coming back down, you think, oh, well, this is a false signal. Except what happens next is, in fact, the ultimate bottom for quite a while. Now let's look at it the other side. Here we have this thing going up, and it's pushing against the edge, and now it's pulling back, right? And if you look at the distance between this and this, where is that price within that relative distance? It's still very high, which is why we're up here. We're just barely curling in. Does this mean we're ready to completely weaken? I wouldn't say so, because although the momentum is to the upside, it's still pretty high, right? So like this one here, it drops down on that day and then turns right back around and goes back up. So, how would you know that it's going to stop here? How would you know it's not going to keep going down? Well, I wouldn't say that you do know, but I noticed this. See this trough? It's higher than this trough. See that? Again, momentum has not shifted. It hasn't changed. If it were to go lower and take out that previous one, then you'd think, okay, maybe momentum has shifted. Now here we have this trough, and now we have gone lower than that. and yet that distance is still pretty far away. So momentum has weakened a bit, but is that truly going to be giving it up? I would say that over the course of the next week, as we watch for the PCE data to be reported, we're going to want to watch what is the euro doing, but between now and then. Is that uh, momentum starting to weaken? And then we'll have a sense of, you know, hey, if the day before that's released, which I think that's, let's see here, Tuesday for PCE. We got PMI coming out on Monday, and that'll be something. That will be something. But what's going on here? What we're really looking for is the core PCE number. Oh yeah, so that's actually clear on. Is that Friday? Yeah, that's Friday. Um, yeah, core PCE. So it's all the way till Friday. I thought it was earlier in the week. Anyway, I think that's the big number because that's going to talk about inflation, and then that's going to inform the Fed on whether or not they need to raise or lower rates, interest rates. They're looking for excuses to lower interest rates, but if inflation is running hot, they can't do that. So that's the interest rate climate in the U.S. right now. And so, but over the next 5 days, I really want to watch to see whether the Euro USD has shifted momentum. Um, if I look here at this chart, this is a quick snapshot of 8 major pairs, and I'm just got that same stochastic on them. And as you can see, the pound US dollar, it has not lost momentum. It's still strong. How about the Euro US dollar? We were just looking at that. The Australian, however, is interestingly weak. If you look at Australian compared to any other pair, it is really lost momentum. See how much lower this is here? I mean, I'm going to look to see, does it break this trough? Because if so, that sort of mild upward move is probably in danger. We could see it drop, back down into that region. Um, the U.S. dollar versus Canadian. The Canadian is, really losing momentum. Look at where that is down there. New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So what's going on with the yen pair? Uh, well, the same kind of thing. The yen is looking like it's really weak, uh, and the U.S. dollar is looking weak unless you're looking at the Canadian dollar. So the U.S. dollar, Japanese yen. I mean, uh, the last time I was here it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was saying that the dollar yen pair, it's going to be hard to say for sure where it is, but is the yen going to be, is the U.S. dollar going to be stronger? And we can see what it's done is clearly uh, gone down, continued its downward move, and yet look at that momentum indication, right? It doesn't look like, I mean, there's this little move here, but you see how much that momentum indication has really shifted. So it's quite possible that we could begin to see the US dollar strengthen against the Japanese yen. And I feel like the US dollar strengthening against the Japanese yen and the Australian uh, dollar weakening against the Japanese yen together signal one thing, that the U.S. market is probably under a little more pressure to continue going down. Here's a chart that this is the NASDAQ, and this red line or reddish line is the close to close of NVIDIA's triple 3x thing. So I use the triple instead of NVIDIA itself just so you can see the moves better. And on a relative basis, I can do that. On a relative basis, if you put these together, what you see is that this thing, the line, sort of led the Nasdaq lower, and here recently it it kind of changed its bias, but it's beginning to collapse more. And so I think that what you have is a continuing weakness in NVIDIA. And if NVIDIA goes lower, the NASDAQ is going to go lower because it's just such a, oh yeah, sorry, Daniel. The top bottom line is called Donchian Channel. Let me spell it for you. And I'm just going to put that in the chat so you see the name, Donchian Channel. Yeah. Okay. So here, I think the relative weakness of the U.S. Um, compared to the sorry, the relative weakness of Nvidia compared to the U.S. Nasdaq 100 market is, I think, indicating the possibility that this week, we could resume a little bit more downward movement in the U.S. And U.S. dollars tends to strengthen when the stock market gets weaker because that's people moving their money out of stocks and into cash. There's more demand for U.S. dollar. It's kind of counterintuitive because if somehow the U.S. economy is weakening or economic factors are weakening, then you think, oh, that translates over to the U.S. dollar going down, right? And yes, that's true until you're talking about a serious move, right? If you're talking about a serious move downward in stocks, well, we're already right here just on this little drop. We're looking at, um, you know, 10% drawdown on the NASDAQ. And some people feel like, oh, that's it, 10%. We're not going to lose anymore. It's not going to be a bear market. It's just going to be a 10% correction. And right here, you've had several bullish days. It's past week. People have been buying up. Could this really be the bottom? Yeah, maybe. But when I look at that line right there, the Nvidia, which is the leading stock in the Nasdaq 100, I see that bit right there. See how it's up and then it's down, and prices didn't go up as far. And even though we had this one big day, we're still relatively weak right there. So I'm curious. I'm very curious to see whether or not the U.S. market can rebound. But if it doesn't, and I think that there's a good chance it won't, then we would see potentially the U.S. dollar strengthen because people are, moving money to cash, and that could bring this, momentum indicator showing us something that, hey, the momentum has already shifted in the U.S. dollar, Japanese yen. So anyway, that's my market outlook. Keep an eye on over the next 5 days how the market responds in anticipation of that inflation number, and of course how it reacts on Monday to the PMI number, which is a producer. Well, let me just click on it here. The level of diffusion index based on surveyed purchasing managers in the manufacturing industry. Okay, so it's manufacturers saying, hey, are we going to be purchasing more or not? Are we, but the manufacturing sector has, in the U.S. anyway, has become a little less important over the past decade. It's not unimportant. That's why, they've still got a red here. But I feel like the markets they really are not going to have a lot of news. The U.S. markets are not going to have a lot of news to be pushing them around. So whatever is happening over the next 2 or 3 days is more just people's attitudes and sentiments over what is likely to continue occurring. So they're important days to watch because when whatever the price does when there's no news, that reflects what people's beliefs are. And what people's beliefs are how they filter the news when it comes out. So really important days for us to watch over the next 2 or 3. And an easy way to see them is this momentum oscillator, or the stochastics viewed as a momentum oscillator. I hope that's useful to you, and that you use it to trade well in this coming week. And before we quit, any questions that you might have based on what I was saying there, just real quick. All righty. Looks like that's a wrap for us, Sam. Everyone take care and trade well.